This is what's left of Vovchansk, a town on Ukraine's northern border with Russia. This is the Kremlin's new northern front. In the past month, Moscow has massed an estimated 30,000 troops in this sector, pushing through Ukrainian defences to attack dozens of settlements in the Kharkiv region. It's also ramped up airstrikes on Kharkiv itself, Ukraine's second city. And for Russia, retaking that would be more than just a military victory.
How can Russia prove that it is this wonderful, separate culture, this civilization rather than a country, if it can't convince Russian speakers in Kharkiv, not to rather die fighting than live under Russian rule? It can't. And I think that's why, in particular, what we're seeing in Kharkiv is of monumental importance. The whole war is important, but particularly battles for Kharkiv, because Kharkiv is the symbol that Ukraine is very, very much not Russia.
These areas in red are the territory in northern Ukraine the Russians are thought to have seized. Vovchansk is just 50 miles from Kharkiv. Vladimir Putin says he wants to create a buffer zone to protect Russian territory from artillery strikes. There's been criticism of Ukraine's defences. Fortifications supposed to stop the Russians in their tracks have been quickly overrun. For Ukraine, things are critical. They need more weapons, more ammunition and more men. Dr. McGlynn has studied Russian propaganda techniques and written a book on how Vladimir Putin has moulded and manipulated the Russian worldview.
If we talk about, Putin as brainwashing Russians, we're never really going to understand. Instead, what we can talk about is that he tapped into certain needs of the Russian population and then manipulated them towards his own ends. But, there was huge support for the annexation of Crimea. Basically, no elites left the Kremlin after the annexation of Crimea. I lived in Moscow then, I remember the parties. I remember that there was a lot more public support for intervention in Donbass than there was among the elites. Bluntly, this is not one man's war. I think it's fair to say it's Putin's invasion, because that was a decision that was made with very few people. But a war like this, it doesn't continue without the involvement, particularly when you have so many dead and injured. It doesn't continue without the involvement of the vast majority of society.
The Russian attacks around Kharkiv are designed to stretch the Ukrainians, but they're also continuing to attack in the east, around Chasiv Yar and the Donbass, the starting salvo of what's expected to be a summer offensive. So what if Russia wins this war? What would be the effect on us here in Britain?
Energy prices will be likely to go up 41.5%. That would particularly hit the poorest households. They would end up spending 25% of their budget on energy. And this would be because of Russia's access to the resources within Ukraine. Another issue would be food price inflation. It would become at least 25% and up to 50% more. There would, of course, be increased defence spending. There's predicted that there would be around 20 million refugees who would leave Ukraine in the circumstance of some form of Russian victory. So that's then going to cost at least a minimum of another £5 billion for the Homes for Ukraine scheme.
Dr. McGlynn says Ukrainians are becoming more cynical about Western support. Kyiv knows its own defence industries will eventually have to provide much of the weaponry and ammunition it needs to keep Russia at bay. The consequences of it losing, devastating for European security and felt far beyond Ukraine. Simon Newton, Forces News at the London Defence Conference. Thanks for watching. For more from Forces News, like and subscribe to our channel.